Our first presentation is Voice of the Future, Youth Shaping Goals and Driving Change Together. Please join us in welcoming our first speakers to the stage, Sohil, Mariah, and Nathan from the Children and Youth Behavioral Initiative. Thank you.
Happy Sunday. So good to be with you all. I'm a pediatrician by training, and I have the honor of directing California's Children and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative. We don't like the best acronym, so it goes by CYBHI. The goal here is really to honor your voices and to transform the way we support our children, our youth, and our families throughout the state. And so we've been talking to you a lot over the past few years, and you've told us a lot of important things. And I'll tell you, I personally come by this work by way of taking care of kids in hospitals. And I won't go through the details, but I've seen things I don't want to see again. And I've seen things that are absolutely preventable. And you can guess the skin color of the people that I've seen. And that, by the way, some folks heard me say this yesterday, that has nothing to do with their biology. It has to do with the way society and systems sometimes treat people. And so we can do better. And we're hoping to do better, right? And so working with all of you, what you've told us is when we think about behavioral health systems and supports, position resources where we live our lives. We have to do more in the healthcare system, right? And through this initiative, we are working on getting more psychiatrists, more social workers, more nurses out there. We've codified a new profession, a wellness coach. So we're working on building up that system by working with training institutions. We're building more facilities. We're working with primary care. So we're doing a lot there. But you said we don't live in the doctor's office. We live in homes. We live in community. We live in schools. We live in colleges. We live in childcares, and we live online. And so we're working to support all of those different aspects and trying to do so with equity at the core, with prevention as a focus instead of just crisis management, and with youth at the center. And having youth at the center means me shutting up and turning the mic over to these two amazing folks. So with that in mind, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna just, I'm so honored to be on the stage with Kwa Nathan No and Mariah Dixon, who are two of our youth fellows in CYBHI. And what that means is sometimes they get to be on amazing stages and get to hang out with all of you, and sometimes that means they get to be on Zoom meetings and emails, and they get to see how the sausage gets made a little bit. And so here's my chance to ask them some questions, but after that, we're gonna open up the floor to any of you to ask the three of us anything that's on your mind when it comes to this, okay? So maybe with that, let me pass to you, Nathan, first, just to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and anything in your life you want to share about what brought you to this stage.
For sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Nathan. I'm a youth fellow with CYBHI, and what brought me to this stage? I feel like it's difficult for any youth to try to condense their story into a 2-minute soundbite, but I'm going to try my best. What brought me to this work was seeing the suffering that my peers experienced and also the suffering that I went through. I remember when I was first diagnosed with my mental illness. It was a really scary time for me. And when I had an episode at school, that's when I learned just how schools handle things. I remember being handcuffed in front of my peers and loaded into a squad car. And I remember it being just some of the most humiliating moments of my life. I then found my way to work with my county because right after I graduated, my high school district decided every school needs a school wellness center and we need to do something better about this. And I'm like, I'm just so happy you guys did that the year after I graduated. So I had the privilege of being part of Santa Clara County School Wellness Advisory Group. And it was my first kind of dip in the water of how I can transform my experience into something better. I also got to work with Alcove as a youth advisor, where I work with the Stanford Center for Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing to try to create better places in the community for all of us. And through that work, I eventually found CYBHI. Everything from school wellness centers to Alcove I didn't know it, but I was part of the initiative. All of the work that I was doing was being funded by this very, very big, sprawling acronym with 38 work streams that I'm still trying to learn about. But nonetheless, it was a positive force in my life. And then when I just heard about the opportunity to do more with it, um, I found my way here, and I get to be at this amazing panel in front of you all. So thank you.
Hi, so my name is Mariah Dixon. I'm a youth fellow with CYBHI. I worked alongside with Nathan and Sohil. And as a young person with lived experience with like my mental health struggles and homelessness, I just wanted to be a part of the change I want to see in the system, I guess. Similar to Nathan. I don't know, I just wanted to be involved in like a system, in like a organization like CYBHI, because one thing that they wrote, especially in their youth at the center report, is that like the young people who are like closest to the problems or at the center of the problem are the closest to the solution, and I definitely believe that. And I think just being here just helps me amplify youth voices, make sure their voices are being heard, and I can advocate for their needs. And yeah, that's why I joined.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here and the work that you do day in and day out with us. Like I mentioned, you're seeing the work happen, right? So for those who are less aware, this is a multi-billion-dollar, multi-year effort with maybe not 38, but 20 different components. Maybe some subcomponents we'll get up there, that has its tentacles in hopefully the fabric of our society to lift us all up. And I'm wondering, what within that are you in particular most excited about? Like, where do you see the most hope and change?
I'm most excited about Never a Bother, which is basically here. I just yeah, so it's basically it's focused on spreading awareness about suicide prevention, and that is kind of like a reminder that, you know, like, you're actually never a bother. I feel like young people have a struggle of like wanting to come forward because they feel like they're like a burden, and I think the slogan "Never a Bother" is like a great reminder to let people know that you're not alone. There's resources available for you, and like, we care. So yeah, Nathan.
Ooh, okay. I would say one of the best things I got to work on is Live Beyond and ACEs Aware. It's CYBHI's campaign to just increase awareness of adverse childhood experiences, and not just what they do to us mentally, but also physically, and how they manifest. It's something that I definitely have been through myself. It's something I've seen affect my community members. And it also just gives me the chance to incorporate my heritage. And I know that sounds a little weird, but what I mean by that is I'm the child of 2 Vietnamese war refugees. They have many ACEs, and the epigenetic scarring that war put in them was passed on to me. And so much of the work I do is motivated to try to transform that suffering I inherited. But not everything that was passed on to me was bad. Both of my parents are also very proud Vietnamese Buddhists. And part of our tradition is that there is no separation between the mind and the body. And I know, like, with clinicians and physicians and scientists, the idea that what we experience, the trauma we go through, affects our blood and our body is super radical. But I also know that many of us here come from indigenous traditions, African and Asian and Eastern spirituality, where that concept isn't new to us. That arbitrary divide between the mind and body is something that our ancestors just didn't believe in. And it feels really, really beautiful to see that perspective that they had is just helping so many people within our current medical system.
It's actually a nice segue, because when we talk about how to bust stress and how to think about mitigating the impact of adverse childhood experiences, nutrition is one of those ways. So if you need to get up and get food, fully support that. Good, healthy nutrition. Maybe with the 2 campaigns that you just highlighted in mind, I will point out that on your tables is material about these two campaigns. As Mariah mentioned, Never a Bother is focused on suicide prevention. And I will say personally, I feel like sometimes we're ambiguous about the pronoun that starts that. And we often say, you are never a bother. But I really also want you to feel it internally, right? That I am never a bother as well. And there's great information and resources that won't do much if they stay on the table. So engage with them, learn about what it means when you call 988, learn about actual language and conversation starters you can have with friends if you're concerned about them. And then with the information about Live Beyond, that is about understanding everything that Nathan just mentioned and understanding that you can live beyond it, that there are ways to mitigate those impacts and to live healthy and beautiful lives. So I just appreciate that. Mariah, you highlighted the Youth at the Center report, which is a report I encourage everyone to read. It has 12 calls to action that really are part of our North Star for the work that we do. And in that, one of those calls is a call that youth want self-determination. They don't want empowerment, they want self-determination. And I'm wondering if you can describe a little bit more about what's meant by that. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, okay, so self-determination for me basically just means having the freedom or power to make decisions about your own life and healing journey. Having youth be the expert of like their own needs and be able to choose the kind of support that they need. I feel like in an ideal system, it's not a one-size-fit-all solution, which is not driven by like policies or funding limitations. I feel like instead they're empowered by like youth are more empowered to lead with their own path towards healing. What do you think, Nathan?
Ooh, okay. I feel like the conversation around empowerment and self-determination can feel abstract. So I'm going to do my best to try to illustrate this spectrum of self-determination empowerment with examples. Pretty sure the panelists with me right now who are a little surprised that I'm being a little uncharacteristically vulnerable. It's something I'm trying to get better at, and I feel like it's something that's especially needed in this time. So I'm going to illustrate what lack of self-determination and empowerment looks like by sharing my own story with that. So prior to transferring to UCLA and becoming a youth fellow with this large initiative, I was homeless, and I very, very rarely share that aspect of myself. It's only now that I see that the perspectives of unhoused and unsheltered youth are more desperately needed more than ever in this time. And I remember when the city of San Jose was power hosing us off the streets, when me and the people in my shelter were fearful of the policies that were being passed. And my shelter had a very strict policy of kicking us out as soon as possible. And the only way I was able to convince them to let me stay was if they, and I'm quoting the person who told this to me, pimp me out. And what they meant by that was they were a shelter, so they needed philanthropy and funding. And that meant trotting me out in front of donors. It meant putting me on their marketing materials. It meant using my story. This poor queer Asian kid that they took off the streets and who is now on his way to UCLA. That is what self-determination and empowerment look like when they're stripped away. And I would say times I felt empowered were when I was a youth advisor. I was able to apply and compete and get into a group of people who were able to influence their community. That was empowerment. I had nothing, and then I was given a title and a position and at the time, very meager stipend to potentially influence some change. But self-determination meant that what I went through, self-determination is when obstacles to power don't exist. Self-determination means that me and the people who are going through challenges in the world don't need someone to give us a title or power or a position to separate us from other people to influence change. It means that when me and other community organizers try to get together, we don't have to go through red tape and get funding and so on. We have an intention to make the world better, and that should be enough.
Thank you for sharing your story and everything you've been through. These are two of the most resilient people I know on this planet, so it's just such an honor to be on the stage with them. How do we do better? You know, this conference is, as Elizabeth was mentioned, it's a working conference. Folks are going to hear some hopefully, thought-provoking ideas and concepts, and then they're going to get to work. What should we all be doing, and what should we all be thinking about in that space?
That's a big question. And what
in 2 minutes or less. No, kidding.
Okay. So what can we do better? I would definitely say we need to do a better job of reaching out to the youth who are truly, truly silenced. And what I mean by that is I've been a youth advisor for a couple organizations for a while now. And I have seen the difference in the youth we bring when we offer stipends or hours or opportunities. I'm from the Bay Area, and there's the East Bay, and then there's Palo Alto. And if you're from the Bay, you know exactly what that means. I remember that our initial youth advisory group was comprised pretty much solely of youth from Palo Alto and Hillsborough, if you guys know where that is. But as we began gathering more funding, offering more supports to youth, we saw different perspectives come in, undocumented perspectives, queer perspectives, low SES perspectives, and it truly did transform our work. I don't think I need to tell anyone here that funding is really, really important and that compensating your youth is really, really important. But there's also the added piece of creating an environment where they feel like they can speak. Right now, more than it has been in a while, it's really scary to be someone who's been systems impacted or a foster youth or undocumented. And if you are going to bring those youth to your table, you really, really need to get your messaging right, and you truly need to do your homework in understanding how you can best support
them. For me, okay, Sohil said that like hopefully after here you'll like put in some action, but for me, I feel like too often I see people like talk about change and then they don't put like their money or their action where their mouth is, and it's so annoying. And it's like if I was in a meeting with y'all, I'm not at y'all, but like there'd just be meetings to like we collaborate, and then like it feels like these meetings can go only so far, and it's basically the same cycle of discussions, and like nothing happens, and it starts to feel like a social club to me, where like we're just patting each other on the back for simply acknowledging the problem, and nothing comes out of it. And I think that's something that we need to do better. I feel like we're always just talking about things, but nothing's ever changing. And it's just like, how many times are we going to have the same discussion? Like, we're always having the same discussion about homelessness or police brutality and stuff like that. And it just goes nowhere. Like, we can clearly see the problem. Youth are experiencing it. You can see it in their lives daily. And I feel like it's just time to like step up and just start doing something, because it's annoying for me at least. But yeah, that's it.
You hear that, everybody? We got to do something. You got more than 100 people in this room who may actually be younger than you. What advice do you have for your younger self or for anybody out here?
I would have told my 5-year-old self, you should have bought a house in 2008. Yes. You should have invested in Tesla. What I would tell my younger self is to not ascribe by what I feel like everyone who's taken any psych class has probably heard of, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that you need to fulfill like, your basic needs first before you can like, think about better things. A lot of people were like, why are you doing like advisory work and unpaid mutual aid work when you frankly don't have a shelter? And I'm like, you know what? Fair point. That's great. But as someone who's been burned a lot by mental health services and our system, I truly found meaning and emotional well-being in activism, in doing community work. I don't think that many adults realize that if done correctly, the youth that they work with, the way in which they work with them can be just as powerful, if not more than therapy. So I would have told my younger self, it's okay to think about what you're gonna have for, like, beyond what you're gonna have for dinner, or it's okay if you walk into a room full of adults and maybe there are one too many holes in your shoes. You need to be there, not just physically or like the world needs you, but you need this for yourself.
I feel like I would tell my younger self, I was a bit of a people pleaser and I care about too much what people thought about me. And so I would just tell myself, like, who cares what other people think? I remember, like, my mom used to say, like, before you walk out that door every day, you should know who you are. The world's going to tell you who you are. And that made no sense to me because I was like, what? But then, like, I definitely got that when I, like, got on my own. I was like, everyone's trying to label me as, like, some crazy bipolar person or, like, some homeless person. I was like, that is not me. Okay, and that's not, I don't want to be labeled as that. But I think it's important that you should learn who you are and don't let anyone tell you who you are. And yeah.
Thank you both again for sharing your wisdom and your experiences for everyone to benefit. We have about 15 minutes or so left, or about 10 minutes or so left, and we want to open up the floor. What questions do you have for these two amazing folks, or me, or anything else that we have?
Hi, I'm Amaris. I'm a part of the Youth Liberty Squad with the ACLU of Southern California. And hi, thank you. I really enjoy you guys telling your story. I'm system impacted as well, so I definitely understand a lot of what you're saying. So this question is actually more for you. Sorry, I know. I guess I'm wondering, I know that you've hired fellows that are system impacted as well. I'm wondering if that kind of system impacted trend also follows through with like your permanent hires. And I'm also wondering if you plan on kind of like really getting into the nitty gritty areas where people are system impacted. Like, are you planning on going into like juvenile halls or like foster homes or like extended schools, or like what's the plan like for really implementing that into like your practices?
Yes, I'll start by saying that those in the foster care system and those in the justice system, and you all probably know this, have higher rates of mental health conditions. And that's not because one necessarily leads to the other in the way you might think. It can also be the other way around, right? There's a bi-directional relationship that's likely there. Yes, so the work itself, when I mentioned the different environments that we're trying to address, I didn't, but should have mentioned, absolutely, the justice system and the foster care system are areas where we're partnering and trying to do the work. I will say, though, it's hard, and it's hard because of all the reasons actually Elizabeth mentioned at the front, is we are structured in different ways, right? We are structured with a mental health care system. We're structured in an education system. We're structured in a juvenile system. We're structured in a foster care system. And we need to do the work to break down those barriers and to make it happen. In this room, I did see earlier folks from the California State Government's Office of Youth and Community Restoration, which is part of the team that works with justice-impacted individuals. And so we're continuing to share out resources and to collaborate to make this a reality. That was one part of your question. The other part of your question is, how do we actually hire young people like this? And I will say that's hard. I wish it were easier, but to be candid with you, we got to work on our different systems and processes to make that happen. Through this initiative, we're exploring an all-of-the-above approach to youth engagement. So we have 2 fellows on our team, and then within the different components that we're talking about, we have youth advisory boards that we've stood up, and we've engaged with community organizations that already have strong and existing and beautiful relationships with youth to help learn from them as well, and many other different types of partnerships and work. So trying many of the different approaches out there to make that a reality.
Hi, I'm the photographer for TFS, and I was just wondering how we can protect young people from law enforcement and protect unstructured spaces for young people.
Defund the police. As someone with obviously very negative experiences with law enforcement, I've become disillusioned with the idea that we can truly reform them. And I also question the idea that they can be reformed when I believe they actually function as they were made to be. The roots of the police in this nation, they originally started as a slave catching force. And as someone who is a student at UCLA and really got firsthand interaction with the folks at LAPD, I can tell you right now, they're not there for us. We protect each other, mutual aid, community organizing, and so on. I know every person in this room has been in a meeting where we're talking about a funding crisis, where we're like, money is low, what should we do? And we're doing that at the same time that law enforcement, that precincts all across the nation are receiving tanks and rocket launchers and war weaponry. The money that is poured into law enforcement should go to counselors. And I'm taking that from the folks at ACLU SoCal. Please read their report, Cops and No Counselors, and the state of how most schools in California have an SRO, but not a counselor, a single one. We need to defund the police. We need to refund mental health services, and we need to stop making law enforcement what they shouldn't be.
I mean, I would add it takes community coming together, right, and thinking about the right solutions. I've noticed, and this isn't specific to law enforcement, but in general, a lot of people lead with the right intentions, but the wrong skill sets or competencies. And I've seen this in so many different parts. And so I think we need to continue to educate and support one another in those spaces as well. But great question.
I go to the California School for the Deaf in Fremont, and it's a school with deaf and hard of hearing students and students for California School for the Blind go as well, all together. Because we live in an area where there's not enough funding to own that money, and sometimes in the school we also deal with issues from within. Well, they don't help students, even though they don't help students with disabilities because it's a deaf village school. I'm one of those people subjugated to that because it's hard for me to understand things because of my multiple disabilities. One of them is autism and depression. So I have a hard time understanding things or doing things right without having all that put together. But as they said, as the presentation from before, an Ustopia is what the school is. And I believe that with the right help from the state, from people, the community, anywhere, the school can improve upon itself even better than what it's supposed to be. Because we have all these supporting people, like for breaking barriers, like NAD, the National Association for the Deaf, and recently with Matt Baker for YOF, I've been involved in multiple things because of that, and I tried to change things from within. But my point is, or question for the matter, is how can we improve the school's ability to help students with different disabilities, even if they don't know how to?
As a student who was diagnosed very, very late and who only received disability services like an IEP long after I should have, I definitely resonate a lot with that question. And in hearing the experiences of other disabled students like yourself, I definitely know that I'm not alone in that. I think the first thing we need to do is just correct all of the misinformation that people who work in schools have of people with disabilities. One of the youth that I got to work with, she's autistic, and she was actually screened for it when she was 12. Her guidance counselor literally said she meets all of the criteria for autism, but girls don't have autism, so it might be something else. So she didn't receive any support for that whatsoever. That's because a lot of the studies we've done on autism were done primarily on young white boys, and there is huge gaps in identifying in girls autistic traits. with, in particular, like boys of color, when they do have ADHD, they are far more likely to be disciplined. The school to prison pipeline disproportionately affects them. I think we need to provide resources for teachers to unlearn so much of the misinformation that they probably were taught early in their training. I also think that we also need to put more mental health staff in schools that are competent and literate, particularly certified wellness coaches. I gave a shout out before to Live Beyond and ACEs Aware, but I'm also really, really excited about certified wellness coaches. They're a new occupation that CYBHI has created and standardized and funded, and it's meant to increase the number of people in schools who are able to provide care and prevention services to students who need it. And I think in particular, we need to focus on what they can do for disabled students. Thank you so much for your question.
No, I'm just going to echo what Nathan said. I think it's important that we just teach educators and like school administrators about mental health and disabilities and remove the stigma around that, negative stigma around them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I will say through the initiative itself, and so glad to have so many educators here in the room today, but we're working on a few different components of it. And so if we think about school based in the sense that you learn things in a classroom, we're working on partnering with all 58 counties on bolstering the efficacy and the evidence to implement social and emotional learning with fidelity, right? This is a framework of how to teach that the evidence shows really improves health and academic outcomes if taught well. So that's one example. We've also developed a curriculum, very much to Nathan's point, around how to teach the adults in that space the biology of stress, an understanding of ACEs, and understanding how to work with individuals who manifest stress in different ways. An online free curriculum that so far about 9,000 different educators throughout the state have engaged with in one form or another. And then what we're working on, which is one of our flagships and most operationally challenging, I'll say, is figuring out how to get care services more linked to schools, so that kids and students, and particularly those who struggle to access it in other ways, can have better access to it. So a number of different work streams and activities that I'm sure we can talk more about. But we are at time, and so first I just, again, want to thank Nathan and Mariah for opening up their hearts and their wisdom and sharing everything with us. So thank you.
From 5 of the Breaking Barriers youth leaders, please welcome to the stage Claire, Saran, Scarlett, Ram, and Rada.
Hi, everybody. My name is Scarlett Valdez, and I am a senior at Pleasant Grove High School, and I'm also part of the Pro Youth Advisory Board. I just, once again, would like to thank Mariah and Nathan for their perspectives. I think it goes really well into what we're up here to present about, and that is just hearing that youth perspective when we are discussing these youth issues. So our what we're talking about today is shared leadership. And so what is shared leadership? We know the word shared and we know the word leadership, but it's where these two connect that brings us here today. Shared leadership is a leadership approach in which responsibility, decision-making power, and input is given to many people, not just one centralized leader. Think of a time in your life when many people from different backgrounds came together to help you or to change something. These people may have had different careers, education, ages, or experiences, but they all had the same goal. And that's why we're here today. All of us have different careers, education, ages, and experiences, but we're all here with the same goal, and that is helping youth. When developing youth programs and making vital decisions that will affect the future of young people throughout California, it is so important that we share this leadership with youth.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Radha Chauhan, and I'm the chairman of the Sacramento Behavioral Health Youth Advisory Board. And I'm here to talk about how elevating youth voice is vital for our society to function. And I'm going to give it to you in 2 reasons. One, including youth, young people from diverse backgrounds ensures a broader range of experiences and concerns considered in decision-making, leading to more equitable and representative policies. Also, second, young people often have a grasp of current trends. Our insights can be valuable to help craft solutions that resonate with both the younger and the older generation. And what this communication creates is a more cohesive society where everyone feels heard and represented. Now, what stuck out to me being a part of a board or an organization is the impact we can create just by giving our input. For example, earlier last year, the board made a policy recommendation for schools across the county to focus on children's mental and physical health, as well as education. And with some guidance and, of course, intensive research, we drafted a policy brief, which was presented to the Board of Supervisors and the Sacramento County Office of Education, all for the intent to focus on the holistic well-being for a child using the community. And my favorite part, the triggered impact, was a response from the Sacramento County Office of Education to establish more mental health professionals, around 125, which we'll see next year. And in short, what I want you to get from me is that a thriving civic system with the perspectives of youth ensures a more inclusive and future-oriented approach. Who better to about youth issues than the youth themselves? Thank you.
Thank you, Rada. If you ask me, I'll say that my journey with my local government of Rancho Cordova started in my freshman year of high school. But that's not really entirely true. It really started when I was in 5th grade and I changed elementary schools. But that's also not true because it started when I was 2 years old and I first moved into my city. The point is, there's no point in my life where I can say this is where local government started to matter to me, because it always has. Our bike trails, our parks, our schools, these are all parts of our daily lives that are mainly managed not by our president, not by our governor, but by our mayors and our city council members. What I have learned through my time observing council meetings and being able to see how local government works is that it is a system built on this simple idea of shared leadership. City councils across the county, state, and country hear the perspective and input of their citizens every single day. They are built on a foundation of hearing the voice of all sorts of people, striving to create better cities for everyone. I had a wonderful opportunity in my city, the opportunity to go to city council meetings, to interact with city staff, to make my voice heard. And this opportunity is not mine alone. Cities across the state more and more want to hear the youth voice and perspective. To say something I'm sure we've all heard before, we, the youth, are the future of our cities, and we have the opportunity to go into our local city halls and make our voices heard, to actually impact what our futures will look like. Your voice matters, so make it heard. Go to your city council meetings, join youth boards, and speak up about what you care about.
Hello, everybody. My name's Ram. I'm a senior at John F. Kennedy High School here in Sacramento. And yeah, I guess I can talk a little bit about shared leadership, kind of my experiences with it and my personal insights. So growing up, I played a lot of sports. You know, my parents kind of just threw me into everything, whether it was soccer, swimming, basketball. They threw me into all these sports. And through that, I've had a lot of different coaches. You know, I've had the coaches who are kind of laid back and kind of want to promote that environment of all of us just having fun. And the other coaches that make us wake up for 6 a.m. practices and will have me running for days on end. And for any of my basketball players out there, have me doing 17s over and over. But I've had all these coaches, you know, and I've seen all these different training styles and approaches. But throughout them, there was one thing that, you know, maintained and kind of resonated. And that was the fact that these coaches always believed that they were the best thing for us. So what this really means is that these coaches oftentimes put expectations onto us that we did not put onto ourselves. And naturally, you can see where the issues in this lie. You know, we didn't have great team dynamics, and we oftentimes didn't see success. And you know, what really the issue was that the coaches believed that their word was law. Whatever they said was the best thing to promote our success. And whether that was true or not, the fact of the matter is that we as players did not understand that. We as players were not on the same playing field as what our coaches were saying, and therefore we could not make the impact that they wanted us to make. You know, and if we relate this back to shared leadership, the only difference between a leader and a constituent is the amount of importance that they put onto the situation. And so, you know, as I continued my basketball career and entered high school, I didn't have a great freshman year or with regard to basketball. I had a similar coach who, kind of tried to push this message, kind of made us do his drills, his plays, all that, without really letting us know the importance of that or why we should do that. And so, I took to coaching. I wanted to kind of switch the dynamics and the traditional conventions that I had that were instilled onto me. So I started coaching basketball. And my freshman year, I was a 14, 15-year-old coach going against these 30-year-olds. And that was a fun time. But, I came to those practices and I would ask my players the same thing every day, regardless of age, whether they were the 7-year-olds I was coaching or the 15-year-olds who were my age. I would ask them the same thing. What do you think we need to improve on? And it is this direct question that elicited responses that would then later dictate what our practices would look like and later dictate what our success would look like. And so this is really what shared leadership is about. Getting the responses from your constituents and expressing the same amount of importance so that everyone is pushing towards the same message. And so before I take up too much time, the really big message that I want to get across here is that as leaders, whether you're a teacher or a coach or just a leader, president of an organization, we need to learn how to take a step back. And as students and as players and as constituents, we need to learn how to step up and begin to take responsibility for what we care about.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claire Conway. I'm a junior at McClatchy High School, and I'm here to share a little bit about my own story. In 9th grade, I had to leave school for over 3 months to receive mental health support for an eating disorder. My mental health had declined to the point where I had lost everything. My social connections, my relationships, my smile, my energy, positivity, and hope. Everything that made me me. I had spent from the fall of 8th grade to the fall of my freshman year suffering in silence, like so many youth are accustomed to. Despite my frustration and resistance, my mom and dad saw how greatly my mental and physical health had declined and decided to send me to a partial hospitalization program. Because my parents were so supportive and adamant about my recovery, I was able to get the help I needed. However, not everyone has this experience. Most people suffering from mental illness do not. Beyond that, I shouldn't have gotten to the point where I needed to be hospitalized and taken out of school for 3 months. I just had my 17th birthday last week, and it was hard not to think back to my 15th birthday that I spent in the hospital. Prevention is key in situations when it comes to mental health. Kids only get the proper prevention assistance they need when all systems, parents, peers, teachers, counselors, mentors, principals, therapists, etc., work together. Change only comes when we come together. Prevention in terms of mental health is just one example of an issue that takes a unified team to solve. We need to look at a child or a teen as a puzzle. Each person in their support system has a piece. When they come together, we are able to see and assist a person as a whole. Oftentimes, a kid in mental health distress or battling mental illness is unable to articulate their needs. Personally, I confided in my friends far more than I did any adult. Not that it was their responsibility, but if my friends had reported me, I probably would have been upset, but not for long, because I wouldn't have suffered so much for so long. This is why parents, teachers, friends, therapists, etc. need to come together, as no one person knows what's best. Now, I'm going to go off script for a second, because it was difficult for me to listen to Lisa and Elizabeth speak earlier, because I'd already had this little speech written out, but the more they spoke, the more I felt like I needed to add to my speech, because I just have so much to say about this topic, and I clearly just did something on the screen. Anyways, hearing Elizabeth and Lisa speak, I could hear their passion, anger, and most importantly, their hope. And I need all of you in this room to feel as well. I need you to not only feel it, but I need you to act on it. Because the youth are suffering, and we are dying, and we are taking our own lives every day, but we are still fighting. And we have to fight to just keep our brain chemicals in balance and our head on our shoulders, because it is so damn hard to be a teenager. So the least you can do is fight alongside us. And the best way you can do that is to listen. Just listen. Give youth opportunities to share what they need. It is unfair and unreasonable to create change for youth and families without involving them in the conversation. Kids and parents aren't dumb. They aren't unqualified or too naive to make decisions regarding policy and positive change in their own community. In fact, they're the most qualified. Just because I'm 17 and I haven't even graduated high school doesn't mean I shouldn't have a voice in politics, public policy, my school, my community, etc. I have lived experience that the majority of adults in this room don't. And that goes far beyond just me and my story. 50% of mental illness develops by the age of 14. Approximately 12 teens take their own life every day in the United States. Only 1 in 7 of youth ages 12 through 17 suffering from mental illness receive treatment. These are not new statistics. This is not new information. Things are not changing because we are not changing. Our systems are not changing. Take a look around. The youth and families in this room all hold lived experiences that give them vital insights onto how we can change our world for the better. Kids need help. For the adults in the room, I urge you to look at me when I say this and hear me say, prevention and progress are not possible without learning from the present battles our youth are fighting today. The only way to learn is to listen. Thank you.
Not only is the focus on mental health is crucial, as Claire has just highlighted, but we also need to emphasize the accessibility to support ensures the resources for youth. Because here's the thing, in California, we talk about the why. We talk about why it's important to be successful, why it's important to get a 4.0 in high school, and why all of this. But we don't teach people the how. Because the question is, how do we teach you to get the resources they need to be successful? You can't be telling you the why. You need to tell them the how, step by step. Hello, everyone. My name is Saran Tukshagal, and I serve as the first Mongolian American commissioner to serve California as your youth commissioner for California Department of Education Advisory Commission on Special Education, in a role that I represent over 850,000 disabled students across California in the education system. And the work that I represent, disabled students, where I went to commission meetings to advocate for students with disabilities and communities, marginalized communities, I began to ask this: what about those who are incarcerated? What about those in juvenile halls? Because this group is often overlooked in our system, yet they are a part of our system. They don't get the resources they need. They don't get the mental health support. They don't even have basic accommodations like the one that I did research with in a publication with the LA County Department of Education. I remember a lawyer was telling me how a kid was not able to get headphones to get the services they need. My passion is not just advocating for them, but ensuring they get the resources necessary in order to be successful. How do I get out of the system? How do I integrate into society, and how can I become better? They are a part of our system, and they need all of us. Together, we can help them to get the support they all need in order to be successful. We must take the risks and collaborate with each other because youth are worth fighting for. Remember, one system, one state. Now, I wanted to pose an important question with the solution. How can adults and we build a platform for those in juvenile halls, but also for all youth in California? And my solution is this: for the many years experiences of being on youth advisory councils and etc., I know that there's so many communities like in juvenile halls, and the idea that I came up with is having youth advisory boards or youth councils in juvenile halls. I actually mean it. It sounds kind of impossible, but actually giving those who are incarcerated in juvenile halls to give a platform for them to advocate for their needs, for them to tell their officers, to tell their educators, their teachers, and the wardens to tell them, we need resources. These are my right, and this is what the Constitution says, and this is what California says, and I need my resources. So having those type of platforms allows you to advocate for their voices, making sure their voices are in need. Because I remember last year, someone at this conference says, who asked for this? Literally, because policy isn't just about one person's voice, it's about the voices in total. Those in juvenile halls, those homeless, those in foster, all in total. Thank you.
Now, here's my call to action. Who better to about youth issues than the youth themselves?
Learn to step back and learn to step up.
The actions we encourage youth to take today will shape a better future for everyone.
Nothing about us without us.